It started with the sound of rain on metal, that uneven tapping on the roof of my friend's garage where we'd been working on his old Honda. The kind of evening that feels like it's holding its breath. He'd gone out to grab something, brake fluid, I think, and told me to wait. Said his sister would be home soon if I needed anything. I didn't expect to actually meet her. The lights inside the house were soft, amber, and a little too warm when I stepped in to wash the grease off my hands. The living room smelled faintly of coffee and furniture polish. I was halfway through scrubbing at the sink when I heard her voice. Low, calm, the kind of tone people use when they've already decided not to be impressed. "You're the mechanic?" I turned, still drying my hands on a towel. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure whether to come in or turn back. She had this quiet authority about her, not arrogance, just stillness. Dark hair loosely pinned back, a few strands falling against her cheek. A simple gray sweater, sleeves pushed up. Nothing about her tried too hard, and maybe that's why I couldn't look away. "Not exactly," I said. "Just helping him out. I'm better at breaking things than fixing them." That made her smile. Barely, but it was there. That's honest. She crossed the room, barefoot on the wooden floor, and poured herself a glass of water. I noticed her hand, a faint burn mark near the wrist, like from an oven rack. She caught me looking, glanced down, and tucked her hand away without a word. We stood there for a moment, the kind of silence that feels like it's listening. She broke it first. "You must be Daniel's age." 26, I said. She murmured, as if measuring something invisible. "You sound younger." I laughed quietly, not sure what she meant. She didn't explain, just turned toward the couch and sat down, leaning back with one leg crossed over the other. "You can sit, you know," she said, gesturing to the other end. I did, too carefully. Her eyes flicked toward me, amused. "You're not usually this quiet, are you?" I started to answer, but she was already studying something on her phone. The air felt thicker. My friend's house was never quiet. He always had music on, a game running, something. But now there was only the hum of the refrigerator and the rain softening outside. When she finally looked up, her expression had shifted, not cold, just unreadable. "He's always leaving people waiting," she said, her voice softer now. "He used to do that even when we were kids." I shrugged. "I don't mind waiting." She gave a small, crooked smile. "Not everyone would." Then she leaned slightly forward, like she was about to stand, but didn't. Instead, she rested her hand on the couch cushion between us, close enough that I could feel the faint brush of warmth through the space. Her fingers tapped once, twice, as if to some rhythm only she knew. Then she exhaled, almost a laugh. "You look like you're about to bolt." "I'm not," I said, though my throat had tightened. Her eyes lingered on mine for a second too long. Then, without warning, she reached past me, quick, and grabbed the throw blanket from behind my shoulder. For a heartbeat, her hand pressed against my arm. Firm, intentional. "There," she said, draping it over herself. "You looked cold." She wasn't smiling anymore. Neither was I. The front door opened then, my friend's voice calling out, casual, oblivious. She leaned back into the couch, the picture of calm again. I answered him, but my voice sounded different, like it came from someone else. Later that night, when I got home, I realized I'd been replaying that tiny moment in my head, the brief press of her hand, the look that followed. It didn't mean anything, but it also didn't feel like nothing. It had been a week since that night. I told myself it was nothing, just awkward timing. But when Daniel texted asking if I could help install shelves in his sister's study, I said yes before even pretending to think about it. The house was quieter this time. She was already there when I arrived, kneeling by a stack of books, hair tied up messily, a pencil between her teeth. She glanced up, half smiling when she recognized me. "You again," she said. "You really don't know how to say no, do you?" "Depends who's asking," I said. That earned a small laugh. Short, unguarded, and gone too fast. She stood, brushing dust from her jeans. There were faint circles under her eyes, the kind people get from long nights and too much thinking. We worked side by side, measuring the wall. I held the level while she marked the drill points. She was focused, efficient, every movement deliberate. Still, there was something restless in her. You work a lot? I asked. Too much, she said without looking up. Then, quieter. It keeps me from noticing things I'd rather not. The drill started before I could respond. Sharp, mechanical. She didn't meet my eyes after that. I watched her shoulders tighten with every screw. When the drill slipped, she cursed under her breath. I reached out, steadying the wood, my fingers brushing hers for barely a second. She froze. Sorry, I said quickly. No, she murmured, still not moving. She let out a breath, forcing a small smile. I haven't slept much. There it was, a crack in the calm, the faint tremor behind her composure. We finished hanging the last shelf. Books filled the silence, titles I didn't know, poetry and philosophy, worn covers with folded corners. She handled each one with care, like she was setting pieces of herself back in order. When we were done, she stood back to look at them. He wouldn't have done it this neatly, she said. You're different. I laughed softly. Not sure if that's good or bad. It's just true, she said, and for the first time, her voice sounded unsure. A faint breeze came through the half-open window. A page fluttered from one of the books, landing near my foot. I picked it up, a torn piece of paper with handwriting on it. She reached for it quickly, too quickly. Her hand brushed mine again, this time lingering by accident. The look on her face wasn't annoyance. It was something closer to fear, or maybe memory. You shouldn't read other people's notes, she said, not unkindly. I didn't, I replied. Didn't have to. Her gaze held mine for a moment, long enough for me to notice the tiredness in her eyes, and the way her mouth trembled before she looked away. Then she said quietly, almost to herself, You notice too much. Only the things worth noticing, I said. That made her still. For a second, I thought she might say something else, but instead, she walked to the door, her hand resting on the frame. Lock up when you leave, she said, her voice soft, distant. And don't tell Daniel you were here this long. The door closed. The shelves stood perfect and straight. But all I could think about was the space where her hand had been, and how it still felt warm against mine. The storm came without warning, thunder rolling in like an argument that had been waiting for an excuse. I'd stopped by to return Daniel's drill, but he wasn't home. She was. Again. She opened the door in an oversized sweater, sleeves swallowing her hands. He's at a friend's, she said. You can leave it inside. Rain spilled down the windows behind her, the world outside a blur of gray and water. I hesitated in the doorway, not wanting to track mud across the floor. She stepped aside anyway. Come in. You'll catch cold standing there. I did. She disappeared into the kitchen, the sound of boiling water starting up. Tea, she called. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. The lights flickered once, briefly dimming the room. The air felt dense, humming with something unspoken. When she came back, she handed me a mug and sat across from me at the small dining table. The rain was steady now, sharp against the roof. She looked different tonight, softer somehow, like the day had worn her down. You ever notice how storms make everything sound closer? She said. I smiled faintly. Maybe that's why people talk more during them. She hummed, turning her mug in her hands. Or say things they shouldn't. That lingered. Neither of us looked away. Her phone buzzed then, vibrating across the table. She didn't reach for it. The screen lit up long enough for me to catch a glimpse of a name, Mark. The tone in her voice changed when she finally picked it up. Yes, she said quietly. Then, after a pause. No, you don't get to ask me that anymore. Another pause. Her jaw tightened. Good night. She ended the call and set the phone face down, staring at nothing for a long moment. I shouldn't have answered, she said. Old habit. I asked gently. Old mistake, she corrected. Something fragile passed between us then, an understanding, maybe. The kind that doesn't need explaining. I watched her breathe, slow and uneven. She ran a hand through her hair, laughing under her breath. You must think I'm a mess. I don't, I said. I think you're tired. She looked up sharply at that, eyes glossy but steady. You shouldn't notice that either. I can't help it. The lights flickered again. The thunder rolled closer, and when it cracked this time, she flinched. Without thinking, I reached across the table, just enough to touch her wrist. She didn't pull away. For a second, her fingers turned toward mine, hesitating there. Then she exhaled, almost trembling. You really shouldn't, she whispered. I know. But neither of us moved. Then the sound of the front door latch broke the silence, Daniel's voice shouting something over the rain. She stood up quickly, stepping back as if waking from a dream. You should go, she said, her tone careful again, neutral. I left the mug half full on the table. As I walked out, I caught her reflection in the window, still standing there, one hand resting where mine had been. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which one of us had almost crossed the line. I didn't plan on seeing her again that week, but she called. Not Daniel, her. Her voice was calm, almost apologetic. The shelf you helped with is tilting. I think I did something wrong. I told her I could stop by after work. She said, that's fine, and hung up before I could ask if Daniel would be there. He wasn't. The evening light was dim when I arrived, that soft orange hour where everything looks like it's remembering something. She was waiting by the study door, arms folded, the shelf perfectly straight. It's not tilting, I said. I know, she replied quietly. We stood there, neither moving. The sound of a ticking clock filled the pause, steady, merciless. I shouldn't have called you, she said finally. I just didn't know what else to do with myself tonight. Her voice cracked on the last word, barely noticeable, but enough. I wanted to say something light, something that would make it easier. But the truth was, I'd been waiting for her to call. Every time my phone lit up, I'd half hoped it was her, and hated myself for it. So I said nothing. She turned toward the window, staring out at the fading sky. You know what's strange? You remind me of the person I used to be before I got tired of trying. I swallowed hard. You're not that far from her. She gave a small, bitter laugh. You have no idea. Then, after a moment, you're young. You still think everything means something. I stepped closer, not touching her, just close enough to hear her breathe. And you don't. She hesitated. I used to. But meaning gets heavy when it stops being mutual. The clock ticked louder. I could hear the faint sound of traffic outside, the world still going on while ours quietly stalled. She turned to face me then, her eyes searching mine like she was trying to find a reason not to speak. What are we doing? The question hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth, closed it again. I don't know, I said truthfully. Her shoulders relaxed a little, as if she'd been bracing for a lie. Then maybe we should stop pretending it's nothing, she said. I've never pretended, I said. That made her flinch, not in fear, but in recognition. She stepped closer, and the space between us vanished into breath and silence. For a moment, I thought she might touch me. Instead, she just looked, really looked, like she wanted to memorize the shape of restraint. I can't do this again, she whispered. Again? I asked. Her lips parted like she might explain, then pressed shut. She shook her head, eyes glistening. You don't understand. I ruin things that feel real. She brushed past me then, leaving the faintest scent of her perfume. Quiet, familiar, unbearable. At the doorway, she paused, not turning around. You should go before I forget why I called you. I didn't move. I couldn't. She waited, as if she wanted me to argue. When I didn't, she said, so softly I almost didn't catch it, I hate that I don't want you to leave. I didn't hear from her for a few days after that night. Silence became a kind of answer, the kind that hums quietly but won't let you sleep. Then, out of nowhere, she texted, if you're free, could you help me move a few boxes from the attic? No greeting, no apology. Just that. When I got there, she was already upstairs, surrounded by dust and the faint smell of old wood. The single bulb hanging from the ceiling made the space look like a faded photograph. Careful, she said as I climbed the last step. The floorboards creak when they want attention. I smiled. Noted. We worked quietly, shifting boxes from one corner to another. She was focused, efficient, until she opened one and froze. Inside were photo albums, neatly stacked, their covers worn smooth from years of handling. She sat down on an old trunk and flipped one open. I saw her hand tremble when her eyes fell on the first page. A younger version of her looked back, brighter, lighter somehow. Next to her, a man I didn't recognize. His arm around her, easy and natural. Your husband? I asked softly. She didn't answer right away. Was, she said finally. The word landed like dust, light, but impossible to ignore. She turned another page. He died 6 years ago. Car accident. He was coming back from picking up takeout, of all things. She laughed under her breath, the sound brittle. We'd argued about dinner. I told him to get whatever he wanted. That's the last thing I ever said to him. I didn't know what to say. I sat down across from her, careful not to crowd her. She kept turning pages, slower now. You know what's strange? She said. I stopped looking at these because I hated how happy I looked. But lately, I hate that I don't even remember how that kind of happiness feels. Her voice was steady, but her hands gave her away. She closed the album and looked at me. Really looked. You remind me of him sometimes. I felt something twist in my chest. I don't know if that's good or bad. It's neither, she said quietly. It just makes things harder. The attic felt smaller suddenly, the air thick with the things we weren't saying. She leaned back, brushing her hand over her face. You shouldn't be the one sitting here listening to this. You're too young to carry other people's ghosts. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't carrying them, that I'd just been trying to understand her. But she looked at me in that way she did when she already knew what I was thinking. She stood, closing the box with care. Thank you for helping, she said. And for not saying anything stupid like I'm sorry. I nodded. You wouldn't have believed it anyway. That made her smile, tired but real. As we carried the last box downstairs, a photo slipped loose, gliding to the floor. I bent to pick it up. It wasn't of her husband. It was of her, alone, sitting on a porch, staring at something outside the frame. She looked younger, yes, but also exactly the same. When I handed it back, she held my hand just long enough to say without words, "You see too much." And that was the moment, small, quiet, irreversible, when I realized I wasn't imagining the pull between us. I'd just been stepping into the gravity she'd tried so hard to bury. I don't remember who reached out first this time. Maybe it was her, maybe it was me. By then, the difference didn't matter. It was late again, the kind of late that feels borrowed. When I arrived, the house was dark except for the soft lamp glow spilling from the living room. She was sitting on the floor beside the couch, knees drawn up, an unfinished glass of wine beside her. She looked up when I entered, not startled, just relieved in a way she tried to hide. I didn't think you'd come, she said. You knew I would, I replied. She gave a tired smile, then gestured for me to sit. I did. We didn't talk for a long time. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, just there, like something we'd both agreed to carry. After a while, she said quietly, I keep thinking I'm too old to feel anything new. You don't look old, I said before I could stop myself. That's not what I said. Her tone wasn't sharp, just honest. She swirled the wine in her glass, watching the light move through it. When you've lost enough people, you stop expecting anything to last. It's easier that way. Is it? She looked at me then, really looked. No, she said softly, but it keeps me from hoping too hard. We sat in that truth for a while. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a clock somewhere down the hall. You remind me I'm still capable of wanting something, she said. And that scares me more than being alone. I didn't have an answer for that, not one that would help. So I just shifted closer, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted to. She didn't. Her hand was resting on her knee, and when my fingers brushed hers, she didn't move. Her breath caught, barely audible. Daniel wouldn't understand, she whispered. I know. He doesn't have to. Her laugh came out like a sigh. You make things sound simple. They never are, I said. But sometimes they still feel right. She looked down at our hands, now loosely tangled. Her thumb traced over my knuckle, absent, hesitant, real. You'll regret this, she said, not as a warning, but as something inevitable. Maybe, I said, but not tonight. We sat like that for what felt like a long time, the kind of silence that fills every corner until there's nothing left to say. She leaned her head back against the couch, eyes closed, her face softened by the half-light. Without thinking, I reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't open her eyes, just whispered, Don't make promises you can't keep. I won't, I said. Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, more like surrender. Then she shifted closer, resting her forehead lightly against mine. No words, no declarations, just breath shared in the quiet space between right and wrong. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. Inside, the clock kept ticking, indifferent, steady, honest. And in that small, impossible moment, everything finally stopped pretending. It's strange how the quiet moments stay with you longer than the big ones. I still remember that night. Not the words, not the touch, just the stillness afterward. The kind of silence that felt like it finally had permission to exist. I don't see her often now. Daniel moved away for work, and the house was sold last spring. She lives in a smaller place across town, near the river, where the air smells like rain even on clear days. Sometimes we text, sometimes we don't, and somehow both feel right. People think closure is something that happens all at once, a conversation, an ending, a decision. It's not. It's the slow untying of what used to pull at you. It's realizing that missing someone doesn't mean you made a mistake by knowing them. She once told me, "You make things sound simple." Maybe she was right. But I've learned that simplicity isn't the absence of pain. It's the moment you stop running from it. I think she stopped running too. Last month, she sent me a photo of the rebuilt shelf, the same one we put up that first night. A few new books lined the top, their spines bright and clean. Underneath, she'd placed a small potted plant. Just a short message followed. "It's finally straight." I stared at it for a while, smiling like an idiot. Because I knew she wasn't talking about the shelf. What changed in me? I learned that wanting someone doesn't always mean keeping them. That sometimes love, or whatever fragile form of it you find, isn't about ownership or promises, but the way someone changes how you see yourself. She made me slower, quieter, more aware of what I didn't say. And I think I made her remember what it feels like to be noticed without being needed. The last time we met, just coffee, broad daylight, two ordinary people. She laughed when I told her that. "You still overthink everything," she said. "Maybe," I replied. "But maybe that's the part of me you kept." She didn't deny it. Just smiled, eyes soft, like she'd already forgiven both of us for the things we couldn't name. We sat there until the cafe started closing, the late sun turning the windows gold. When we stood, there was no long goodbye, no cinematic pause. Just a quiet understanding that some stories don't need to end, they just settle. Now, when I think of her, it isn't with longing or regret. It's gratitude. For the shelf, the rain, the silence. For the feeling that something impossible had, for a moment, felt right. And for teaching me that sometimes, the people who shake your life apart are the same ones who teach you how to hold it gently again. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?